When you finish this lesson, you should be able to support your views on whether a citizen should participate in government and in voluntary organizations. Civic life is promoting the quality of life in a community. Civic participation is taking part in formal political processes and taking part in community activities outside of government. Constitutional principle is the essential idea that we as a nation believe about good government. One example of constitutional principle could be separations of power. Influence is an effect on or to cause changes to something. Social action is individuals and groups solving community problems without relying on the government to do it for them. To monitor means to keep watch over something. Political action is a way that citizens can address problems in the community through participation in civic life. It comes in two forms, formal and informal. The advantages to volunteering is using your civic participation as a good and beneficial tool. You can monitor or influence the government too, and the advantages of influencing government is altering the outcome of their decision for the better. Citizens should have a role in government by being able to give their opinions and their decisions. I would react negatively if the bike shop fixed my bike poorly, as well as if the government acted poorly. For instance, if the government passed a law that violated my right to speak, I'd lose trust with them and tell my friends about it. Similar to losing trust to the bike shop and telling my friends that they are not a good establishment. There is no you have to participate in government or not, but at least you should try and participate in government to see if you like it. Kids our age or younger can educate themselves with government by getting well informed on the candidate that they support. Another way is to talk to a person 18 years or older and tell them why you support them and go vote for them on your behalf. And if they don't support the same candidate as you can, then you can talk them into why your candidate is better than the ones that they're going to vote for. Or you can also volunteer in organizations or in anything that's going on in the community. The purposes of government are establishing laws, maintaining order, and providing security, protecting citizens from threats, and promoting the general welfare. I think maintaining order and providing security is extremely important because without order, it would be an anarchy, and we need security to protect and defend our country and its people. It is important that citizens monitor their government because they want to be informed on what the government is doing, and they also want to make sure that they are ensuring the purposes of why the government was created. If very few citizens monitor and influence the government, it might be as good because only a few people are saying what they want, and then the other people might get mad because they didn't want what the other people chose. In the book, it says, another important role of citizens is to attempt to influence the decisions and actions of government. To influence means to have an effect on or to cause changes in something. It is the right of citizens to try to influence the decisions and actions of government that affect our lives. So it is important for us to influence the government for our political desire and so we can say what we think is right. Some examples of civic life are monitoring and influencing the decisions of government. Some citizens might participate in government by voting for leaders or holding a leadership position yourself, or they can take part in organization meetings and community activities such as rallies, fundraisers, or writing, or hand out pamphlets and articles.
Understand that these principles define and shape the American constitutional government. I like to think of these principles as the foundation that our federal government is built upon. The first and probably most important is the principle of democracy. Democracy is a word that dates back to ancient Athens, Greece, which literally translates to people power or rule by the people. This is the basic understanding that it's the people who are responsible for making decisions in our society, not some king or ruling family like the medieval days. Now, in a democratic society, the people make decisions by voting. Although most people would tell you that America has a democratic government, technically Technically, we have what is known as a republic, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Regardless of how the government is set up, democracy is the idea that the people rule, and this is the foundation of our principles and our government. Taking this idea that the people are in charge a step further is the principle of consent of the governed. And this principle, dating back to the days when we were still part of Great Britain, means that the people are the source of any and all governmental power. Remember, a source is where something comes from. The idea of consent of the governed was written into the Declaration of Independence, the document creating the United States of America, when Thomas Jefferson wrote that, quote, "Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed," unquote. This principle can also be found in George Mason's words in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, when he states that the people cannot be taxed without their own consent. Remember, the governed are the people. And to give your consent is to say that you agree or give your permission. So consent to the governed means the people allow the government to rule us. We give our consent to the government in a variety of ways, from when we obey the law to when we vote for them to continue to run our government. Consent to the governed clarifies that it's the people who have the power, not the government. Now, as I was saying before, America is technically a republic, and a republic is a representative democracy. And this is our next principle. A representative democracy means that the people elect public office holders to make laws and run the government on the people's behalf. The ancient Athenians who created democracy had what is referred to as a direct democracy, in which all of the citizens would get together to vote on all of the laws and issues. In America, we're way too big and way too busy to vote on all of the issues, so we elect people to do that for us. Those elected officials are known as our representatives, and they're supposed to look out for our best interests, aka represent us. The principle of representative democracy explains that even though the people have the power, we give some of that power to our elected officials. Now, how do we know that we can trust these elected representatives? Well, this leads to our next principle, the rule of law. The rule of law means that we are a society of rules or laws that guide the way we interact and treat each other. And that includes the people we elect to run our government. The rule of law means that the government and those who governed are bound by the laws, as are those who are governed, us. There's an expression that goes along with the rule of law, and that is that nobody is above the law. The rule of law is what gives us protection from the government and from ourselves. This allows us to give power to elected officials, knowing that they can't take away our rights or abuse their power, and if they do, they will face the same consequences that we do. President Richard Nixon found this out the hard way when he broke the law, as have other government officials when they have used their office to steal money or commit other illegal or unconstitutional acts. Remember, the rule of law means that everyone must obey the law, including the government. Now, what all these principles have in common falls under our last one, which is limited government. This is the idea that the government is not all powerful and may only do those things that the people have given it the power to do. We put a lot of faith in our elected officials. We give them the power to use large sums of money paid by us in the form of taxes. We let them control a military made up of our own citizens. We allow them to make decisions that are going to impact all of our lives. And for that reason, we want to make sure that we put some limits on the power that we give them. Limited government means that we have a system which ensures that nobody in the government has too much power, because power is something that can be abused. This was especially clear to the framers of the U.S. Constitution, our rule book for the federal government, who had lived in a time when many nations were ruled by kings or queens who often abused their powers. And that is why these principles are so important. Today, there are countries around the world ruled by leaders who abuse the rights and privileges of the people they rule. These principles that the Founding Fathers put into place in the Constitution ensured that America would have a government that was, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, of the people, by the
Different ways that citizens can serve the common good is to get a good education, live in a healthy environment, live in a safe and orderly neighborhood, and feel that if you are a member of the community. Living in a safe environment is important to me because it makes me feel like I'm not in danger. In the preamble, it also states ensure domestic tranquility, which means we need peace in our country, which also means that a safe environment is crucial. Getting a good education is important because if you study a lot, you can get a good career and many more options. Feeling a full member of the community is important because it makes you feel that you are not left out and it makes you feel at home. A healthy environment is important for our safety. All these personal goals can be related to our common good because since I've been growing up and getting used to these personal goals, it will make me feel like a better person and also I can take part in making our country better. In the book, it quotes sometimes our personal goals are linked to the common good. A personal goal might be to get a good education. It is also in the common good that communities provide good schools so that everyone in the community could get a good education and be able to contribute to the community. Everyone should have the opportunity to realize that goal. So, if I took part in any organization or anything to help the community, I could be able to attain a good and safe environment. In the book, it quotes civic life is the public life of citizens. Civic life is different, but not necessarily separate from private or personal life. In our personal life, we concern ourselves with a particular interest, such as getting an education or having a job. Our civic life, on the other hand, is concerned with our own interests as well as the common affairs and interests of our community and nation. You can judge whether information you find on the internet is accurate by looking at any magazines that can relate to what you looked up and seeing if what it says on the magazines or anything is related to what you looked up on the internet or by identifying any propaganda that you find. Number 1. Looking for information about government officials and activities in newspapers, magazines, the internet, and reference materials and judging its accuracy. Why? Because determining bias will make my political decision easier and being informed is a great asset. Number 2, voting in local, state, and national elections. Why? I think this is important because getting my vote out there contributes to the representative I want in office. Voting is important because I control who is making decisions for my state, city, and country. Number 3, signing a petition. This is important because signing petitions can solve problems in my area. Number 4, serving as a juror. I think this is important because to serve justice, it seems fun. Number 5, taking part in solving public problems by joining voluntarily groups independent of or in cooperation with government. I think this is important because volunteering is important to contribute in the community and it is fulfilling my satisfaction knowing I will help the cause. An advantage to these participation is helping others and informing myself. A disadvantage would be using my knowledge for bad and being biased while being a juror. Signing petitions protects our rights because you can send a petition to make a law that would secure a right or a petition against a law that interferes with your rights. Taking part in marches, boycotts, sit-ins, or other forms of protest are usually to go against something the government is doing that violates our right, like unfair pay. I would most likely participate in volunteering because you don't need to be any age to do it and you can help out like any homeless people or you can help anyone that needs anything in your community and it would be doing something really good for your community. You can participate in government by voting in elections, petitioning government officials, seeking and holding public office, and any similar activities. You can also go to face-to-face meetings with public officials, writing to newspapers stating your opinion on issues, conducting email or telephone campaigns, attending in marches and demonstrations, and any other activities that are similar to this. Some examples of social action are if you are dealing with crime in your neighborhood, you might want to perform a neighborhood watch group. And if you are dealing with poverty, you might work in a food bank organized by a charitable organization. Myself or even citizens should participate in affairs of the communities if we want our voices to be heard. But also, it is up to each citizen to determine the level of nature of her or his participation in civic life of the community and nation. Political action means that you can do things the informal and formal way. Social action means that individuals and groups solve community problems without relying on the government to do it for them. People might choose social action over political action because it is something that you are not relying on the government to do. Some people might choose political action over social action because they think face-to-face meetings are probably more effective. Democracy runs on the power of the people because people elect representatives and can overthrow them. So it only exists if the people believe with their hearts and minds that they attain that power. If we think we are inadequate, we allow government to reign above us. Political action depends slightly more on government than social action. For example, political action involves voting for government and meeting with officials. With social action, you can disregard government and make individual decisions. Both political action and social action are necessary because they both solve problems in the community, whether it involves government or not. Citizen participation in political action is related to our purpose of government because, like in the preamble, it says that we have to form a more perfect union, and by doing that, we should go to meetings and participating in community things. Participating in government is in self-interest because it's our decision, because we don't have to go to meetings and we don't have to do everything the government and the community says unless it's an obligation.